welcome to Wednesday's £100 meeting. And today is Wednesday, the 3rd of May, 2003. And we have Mike L. with us today. And Mike is originally from Arizona, but he now lives in Denver, Colorado. And Mike first came into OA in 1977. But I'm going to let him tell you all his story in his own words and when he tells us about his experience, strength, and hope. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Mike, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. I'm really honored to be asked to speak here. I'm Mike L. I'm a recovered compulsive eater for today. I have sponsees, and I have a sponsor. I go to regular meetings. I have a home group, and I work the steps on a daily basis. I'm going to start out. 1977 is when I first came to an OA meeting. I wouldn't say that I was a member of OA at that time. I went in. I went into this meeting, listened to what they had to say, grabbed a gray sheet, and then because I thought they were just freaking nuts. And I didn't think it was a place for me. I was in the military at the time, and my struggle was I would gain weight and then have to lose weight for my fitness test, and then I gained weight, and it was just up and down and up and down. And kind of that's my story around food. I came back to OA, which was in probably and I left this one out when I said I came back to OA in the 1980s. I was dieting on my own, and I got a book called Love Hunger, and it had a workbook with it. So I decided, because I isolated, that I would do this myself, and I got suicidal when I did it. I stopped eating and started looking inside and didn't have any guidance, and I just thought it wasn't worth it anymore. So I called the place where the book came from, and I was admitted for a 30-day inpatient psychiatric stay. And they took me to OA meetings while I was there, which was my first time doing that. And I came home to where I lived, and there was no OA, and we didn't have meetings like this. And so I went to a ACOA meeting that was in the basement of the building I worked in. So they were my anonymity. And I went for a month and decided, I got this. I'm losing weight. I can eat what I want, and went right back into the food. And the interesting thing about this, and I'm going to get to my full story, but since we have a half an hour, I feel like I can tell a little more, is when I came back at the OA again when I was dating my wife. My wife's a recovered alcoholic. And I decided that if I went to a 12-step program, I would have a better chance of landing her. And so manipulation was a key point in my whole life. And so I did that. Came back to OA. I went to OA for 6 months at that time. I got a sponsor. I did step 1. I didn't do any more work with my sponsor. I went to 6 months worth of meetings. I lost weight. I got down to the weight I wanted. I asked my wife to marry me. She said yes, and I quit OA. Again, then I was out in the food again, and just this whole thing. Then 14 years ago in February, I came back to OA, and I was in a conference room in my office, and there was a tray full of, and I don't know if we can say foods on your meeting or not, but there's a tray full of brownies. Homemade, big, huge brownies. There was like 12 on them. And I was talking to a friend of mine at a break, and I ate the whole tray. And I'm a ninja binger. Nobody sees me eat. I have this delusion that when I gain 100 pounds, that nobody notices except me. And I had clothes that fit everything. So I just went up and down in the clothes. But I was humiliated, and I felt that same depression I had before about what happened. And so I was in Al-Anon at the time, so I knew about meetings and I knew about program, and I came to OA, and the first meeting I went to, I got abstinent, and I've been abstinent from that point on. The delusion I had is I would share in meetings, and I would say when I came to OA, I was struck abstinence, and I completely discounted the relapses that lasted years. And so I would tell people that when they asked me to sponsor them and they were struggling with a relapse, I would say, I don't have any experience in relapse. And that's the amnesia of this frickin' disease. I forget how bad the pain was when I was in the food. I forget the way I behaved. And that's why I love to speak, because what it does is when I tell my story, it reminds me of what happened. Sometimes I use the bedevilments as keys to remind me of how I behaved. But it's really, to me, is that being the humility we're asked for in this program is that ability to recognize and look at who we are and what we've done. And it doesn't mean that I'm less than. It means that I'm open, honest, and willing as I go through this program. So let me tell you a little bit about me as I grew up, and we got some. I was a fat kid. I was always chosen last when we did athletic things. I stole food when I was a kid. When I was about 7 years old, I had walked down to the local convenience store and got caught stealing candy, and so had to tell my dad about it and my dad I had an abusive childhood. My dad would punish me by taking his belt off and beating me by beating my legs. And I used to think that was normal until I did some work around it. But so that was what my childhood was like. I'm a twin, and my twin brother and I had a lot of the same behavioral issues. And one of the things is that we were identical, and nobody could tell us apart. My mother would say, "Pat or Mike, come here." And so a lot of what I went on with around a kid was about me trying to get my own identity. And so that's when my behaviors around food, but around everything, always about me. I can look back at my self-centered behavior from day one that I can remember. I was very much an actor out. When I was in kindergarten, my twin brother and I were both gagged and tied during nap time because we wouldn't stay still. And that isn't why I'm a compulsive overeater. I was born a compulsive overeater. My things that happened to me made my disease worse. It made me more into the food because I was looking for comfort from the food. But I ate when I was happy. I ate when I was sad. In high school, I became an athlete, and so I didn't have a problem with my weight in high school. I thought I was fat, and I was heavier than I never got a six pack or any of that kind of stuff. But but I still ate compulsively. It's just that I exercised so much in the sports I was in that it didn't change. But I was continually, if I went to somebody's house and we had a dinner and my mom or somebody cleaned up and they threw the leftover dessert in the garbage can, some of that went home with me or didn't make it home. I ate it in the bathroom or something like that. So I'm the real deal. And I stole food. I ate out of the garbage can. I would eat frozen food. I would eat burnt food. And that's how my life went through there. And then I got into college and I discovered alcohol. And so then I was drinking and eating. I never have been to AA, and I think I could have qualified for AA at one point in my life, but I discovered that food is my primary addiction. As I went on in life, I had this internal belief that I wasn't worthy, that I wasn't good enough, that I never could be good enough. And so then I compensated with that by trying to be the best in everything so nobody would see who the real me was. And that happened. I ended up joining the military because I was walking out of college. And so the military let me go to Vietnam. And I was a Navy corpsman and served in Vietnam with the Marine Corps. And that just accelerated my disease. When I came out of Vietnam, the psychological trauma of that made me eat more and eat more aggressively. And so that's how my life was. I ended up staying in the service a while, got a master's degree because I wanted to be smarter than everybody else. I ended up leaving the service because I got pissed at them. And so that's also my pattern, is either you did what I wanted, treated me the way I wanted, or I threw you away. I have had, until I met my wife, I had no serious relationships because I was just full of resentment, full of behaviors that nobody really, I shouldn't say that. I didn't think anybody would really care about me. So any of the relationships I had were very short-lived. So I went on and I got out of the military. I'm a physician assistant. I practice medicine. I have a master's in business. So I went into healthcare administration because it's what my dad and my brother did. And I wanted to prove that I was better than them. That I did not like that job. I basically reached my maximum weight. And if you want to show my pictures, I'll show you what I looked like then. These pictures were, and I don't have very many pictures because I wouldn't let myself be the picture. So the bottom left picture is a picture of me, and this was Halloween when I lived in Alaska. And of course, I didn't dress up because I didn't have anything that I could dress up with. And there I was 364 pounds. I was a little bit less at the top. That's at my mother's house. And then the picture on the right is the way I am today. And so you can drop the pictures now if you want. So anyway, and in Alaska is when I became suicidal and had that experience. And I was large and in charge. I thought I basically was arrogant. Anybody that came to me with anything that I didn't think was the right thing to do, I just discounted it. I put a circular conference table in my office because everybody was equal. And that was the biggest lie I could ever told, because everybody was equal as long as you agreed with me. If you didn't agree with me, then you were full of shit and I'd find a way to get rid of you. And so that's the way. And so after 13 years there, I was fired. I was fired because the building was being unionized. And they were being unionized because of my arrogance. And so when I left there, I still didn't recognize the character defects that were going on inside of me. I still didn't recognize the self-will run amok. I just still didn't recognize how well I treated somebody or how badly I treated somebody. And I had a good reputation in what I showed people outwardly, as far as, so I got recruited to a new job and I got fired from that job for the same reasons. And then I came back to Denver and I went back to being a PA, and I would get fired from buildings I was in because I was treating the staff so poorly. And so I just was again very, very, very arrogant and very self-will run amok. We were reading the 12 by 12 today, and the meeting I go before this, and in the 12 by 12, there's a description of the alcoholic, which is the compulsive overeater, that their intellect is what is his charge, and that's what I was. I just thought I was smarter than everybody else, and that they didn't do it my way. So then in February of 2012, 2009, whatever it was, in February, 14 years ago in February, I came to meetings, and the thing that happened is after I came to meetings, I got a sponsor, I started to do other work, and I had somebody come up to me in my office and say, what's going on with you, Mike? You're being so nice. What are you doing? And the book talks about that sometimes the changes happen and we don't realize them. The first time we realize them is what somebody else says to you. And that was what happened to me. You know, and losing weight has never been a problem. I've gained 100 pounds and lost 100 pounds at least 9 times in my life. So, and it was always the same thing. I got down to close to my ideal body weight, and I'd say that I got this, and I'd eat sugar and I'd be off with it again. So when I came to program, I put sugar down, and I thought that bread was an issue, and I put bread down. And I started working the program, but I still had this belief that I couldn't show anybody who I really was, that I had to have this front in front of me, and just, you know, when they say fake it till you make it, I just faked it. I just, you know, if I was struggling with my food, if I was struggling with my eating plan, I wouldn't tell anybody about it. As long as I didn't eat my alcoholic foods, I felt like it was none of their business. If I was struggling with my wife and I almost got divorced, I didn't share anything with that. I had a friend in program say at one of the meetings I went to that I'm gonna do a class on meditation. Mike, would you like to attend the class? And I said, I don't do that shit. I don't meditate. You know, I follow my eating plan, and I sponsor people. I sponsor them through the OA literature. And then a miracle happened with me. I about 8 or 9 years ago, I got a new sponsee, and he was a really nice guy. Didn't tell me a lot about his past history, as far except his eating and that kind of stuff. And I took him through the work, and he was abstinent from day one. He showed his eating plan that he was using when he came to the program worked really well for him. And I actually ended up using the same eating plan. And I learned a lot from this guy, watching how he worked his program. And when we finished the 12 steps, he shared with me that he was a recovered alcoholic and had been recovered for 30 years, well, 29 years. And he invited me to go to his meeting, his home group, when he was going to get his 30-year chip. And so I said, sure, I'd love to do that. And he got up and shared. And he said something to me that sticks with me too, something to the group, because he talked about his OA recovery and that it was a new level of surrender. And he said he did exactly everything I told him, no matter how wrong I was. And that taught me the power of the book and the power of the literature. And I sponsor through the big book now. So I use the OA literature intermingling with that. It depends on people. If I have somebody that's got it's a strong 12-step program and something else, I'm likely to take them through the OA literature so they get a different picture of it. But for me, that really made a difference. And then the second thing he did is he invited me to a workshop called a meeting. It's AA Al-Anon, called Fellowship of the Spirit. And I went to that. And in the audience, I heard a woman share her struggles with not showing who she really was. And I had a spiritual awakening in that moment. I started crying. I felt tingly. I all of a sudden realized what I was doing. And so I went through the step work again in the big book and had a whole new experience with where I was. And that's the kind of the experience I've had with OA from this point on, is that as I somebody will say, why don't you do this, Mike? And I'll say, oh, that sounds interesting. I'm going to a book study that on Wednesday mornings that's not a conference approved, because we crosstalk and we read non-conference approved literature and that kind of stuff. And we did Drop the Rock. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but it's a non-conference approved book. But what I really learned in that is I've got to do 10, 11, and 12. And I wasn't doing 10, 11, and 12. I wasn't consistent at it. And I wasn't recognizing the way I would recognize that I needed to do a 10-step with somebody was that I would all of a sudden have desire for food again. And that meant I wasn't spiritually fit. And so therefore I would say, I got something going on. I need to do some work around this, instead of being proactive on a daily basis, looking at my day, and a daily basis praying and meditating and reading literature, and so I do that now, and and my program is I think growing, and I think it's growing because I'm developing on a daily basis a much more closer conscious contact with God. I heard somebody share in one of the meetings I go to that he struggled with being connected all day long. And I identified with that. I have always struggled. I get into my work, I get into other things, and God goes to the back of my head, and I don't ask God for any advice. I don't stop and sit quietly waiting for stuff. So he has a watch with a timer on it, and his timer goes off every hour saying, "Thy will be done, not mine." So I did that, and my timer goes off every couple of hours, and it says, "Thy will be done." And I take 2 or 3 breaths and connect back to God at that moment in time. And that has changed the way I treat people, because I treat people with God by my side. And now somebody says something that irritates me, I write about it and I talk to my sponsor, but I don't say anything to him. I haven't had to do a 9th step in at least a year, because I don't react that way anymore. It's real and imagine is what I sometimes I get upset with somebody because I think they think this, but it's then I go back and I do inventory. So it's that closer walk with God, which this whole program is about. I think the food is but a symptom, and boy, I was really good at food. But now it's all about me being closer to God and of service to folks around me. And every time I sponsor somebody, people say, I don't want to get it. My sponsor, I don't want to do this. I don't want to bother somebody. I don't want to call them because I don't want to bother them. Every time I work with a new sponsee, they teach me something as I'm doing this work, because they are the ones that we're here for. When I do the work with somebody, I will. There's a point in the book where they describe what sponsors do, and what our purpose is around that. And I ask them at that point in time. I said, I don't ask them. I tell them, you're going to sponsor when we finish this work, because that's how you stay sober. That's how you keep out of relapse. When you think of others and not yourself, that's how it grows. At least that's how it goes for me. So for me, it's this program has been the slow learning process. I had this same guy, the guy that he ended up being my sponsor for a while, the AA guy that I was telling you about. And after we worked for a while, he says, "Mike, I don't think you have a problem with flour. I think if flour was a binge food for you, it's not an alcoholic for you." And he says, I want you to go back and start eating bread again." Talk about scared. But what I learned is when your sponsor suggests something, you do it. And I did it, and I had no problem with it. So and what I learned from that is we in this program have a tendency to keep adding alcoholic foods to our eating plan. And for me, that was because I didn't trust God. And so anytime I saw something that I thought I liked, I said, "Oh, I can't eat that because I'm going to binge on it." Well, what I found out is that I do have an alcoholic food, and that's sugar. And I proved over and over again, I cannot eat it. But there's other things that I have to eat in measured quantities. If I'm going to have chips, I weigh and measure everything. But if I'm going to have chips, I put them in a container that I can't eat more than what's there. And if I'm going to have anything salty and fried, that's what I have to do, because I know that I can overeat those very easily, but it doesn't turn on the phenomenon of craving. Yeah, and so for at least for me, my solution for everything, even after I came to program, was to control it with white knuckles. And the hardest thing for me to learn in this program was to allow God to control things. You know, in the morning when I'm in my morning prayer, I do the third step prayer. I do 3-step. I pray about 1, 2, and 3, and ask God to take control of what goes in my mouth today. I weigh and measure everything. Let me rephrase that. I don't weigh and measure in restaurants. If I'm eating somewhere, you know, I usually go to restaurants that are have
5 minutes.
Okay, that are chain stores, because they have the calorie consumption and the nutrient. You can ask for a sheet and they have the nutrients on it if they're in California, so you can get that stuff here in the US. So I look at that when I'm eating in a store. If I order a steak, I have a certain size of steak it eats. If it's bigger, I have them cut it in half. And don't put it on the plate. Put it to the side, because I got taught as a kid, you ate you cleaned your plate. So the only stuff that goes on my plate is what I'm going to eat. But, you know, today, my life is absolutely wonderful. I walk the broad highway, but the miracle for me is that I am no longer depressed. I sought outside help for my depression. I sought outside help through the VA for my PTSD. But that is all managed through the grace of God. I was sexually abused as a kid. I was physically abused as a kid. And I've done a lot of work outside this program on that. And I don't eat over that anymore. I think part of my reason for being obese was by trying to hide my body from anybody that might be attracted to it and abuse me. But this, you know, I'm happy, joyous, and free. You know, and I think page 92 in the AA 12 and 12, they have the St. Christopher's prayer, anyway. And that's how I try to live my life. I've tried to be kind and tolerant and accepting of everybody. We are all bozos in the boat. There's nobody here that is above me, and there's nobody here that's below me, no matter where you are in your program. For me, what it is God always has me, and through my whole life, has me exactly where he wanted me, and experiencing what I needed to experience to grow closer to he or she. And my God is a spirit power. When I say God, I don't want to turn off anybody that doesn't believe in a traditional belief, because I don't believe in a traditional belief. And I just thank you all for letting me be here.